From Glendale, Arizona. Minnesota favored by 3. The winner will face the Philadelphia Eagles in the divisional round. Game was moved to Zona due to the wildfires in Southern California. Kickoff at 5 on ESPN and ABC. Elsewhere, Mike McCarthy will not return as Cowboys head coach. According to Vegas, Coach Prime has the best odds to land that job at 3-1, followed by Cliff Kingsbury, Joe Brady, and Lincoln Riley. The Patriots introduced Mike Vrabel as their next head coach. 16th in franchise history. He indicated that Drake May was one of the top reasons for choosing the job. The divisional round will begin Saturday at 1:30 on ABC and ESPN. Texans at the Chiefs. KC is favored by 7.5. Trailblazers back in action tomorrow night. Game 2 of the 5-game homestand. Brooklyn Nets are in town. That tips at 7. Our coverage will begin with Blazers Game Day at 5, hosted by Chris Burkhardt, presented by Coors Light.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio. It's time for the Rip City Drive, brought to you by Lazy Boy. What's your strategy for comfort? Featuring the crazy and often irrational longtime Portland radio vet, Chad Dewing.
Step good, hold down, kick on its way. It is good! The Cardiac Commanders are the Clutch Commanders. They do it again. We'll see you in Detroit. And Zay Gonzalez kicks in the door and kicks us into the second round of the playoffs.
It means a lot, man. You can just see all the fans over here, man. They're waiting for us. They waited a long time for this moment and this feeling, so I'm just so happy for them.
Jaden certainly is a big factor in that. I think if he had his heart rate monitor on in mind, they would not be the same in the game. And his stays pretty consistently good. Sometimes I'm like the duck. If you just saw the feet going under the water, it's good. But he really is into that space, exceptional.
Strap in. The Rip City Drive with Chad Dewing starts now.
All right, what's going on, my friends? Rip City Drive, Chad Dewing here. We're going to talk a lot of football today coming off of Wild Card Weekend. We still have one game tonight. They got moved down to Arizona because of the horrendous wildfires down in Southern California. Rams, Vikings from Glendale, Arizona tonight. Kickoff at 5. It'll be on ABC and ESPN. And right now, the Vikings are a 3-point favorite. So I want to talk a lot of football. Brian Noah of Fox Sports Radio is going to join the show coming up at 4:20. And then we'll focus more in on my Denver Broncos at 5:20 with Ryan Edwards of 850 KOA. So a lot of great action. Really enjoyed the football games, and we are really in a sweet spot of football right now. We had the semifinal games in the college football playoff. Ohio State and Notre Dame are going to meet in the national championship 1 week from tonight, and we had the full weekend of wild card action. So if you have any thoughts on the games, college or pro, you can reach out to me on social media. You'll find me there at Chad in Rip City. Now, if you want to jump on and talk a little sports today, I'm fine with that. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Trailblazers will get a night off. They're going to be back in action tomorrow. The Brooklyn Nets are in town. That game will tip off at 7 o'clock. Portland got smacked around by the Miami Heat late, and they lose 119-98 on Saturday night. So the Blazers will look to get back on track with the Nets in town tomorrow night. Our coverage will start at 5 with Chris Burkhardt with Blazer Game Day. I'll have Rip City Drive live from Moda Center tomorrow. But if you want to jump on board, 503-248-0620. Tomorrow, we'll also have our Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday that we'll do at 4 o'clock. Your chance to win tickets to every game is right here on the Rip City Drive, courtesy of me and your Portland Trailblazers. But I want to talk some football, and I want to start with the Denver Broncos. That's the game that was first up yesterday, 10 o'clock kick on Sunday morning. And I'll be honest with you, going into the football season, and I talked about this so you knew exactly where I stood, I wasn't exactly thrilled about the draft pick for Bo Nix in the first round. I didn't know if he was a first-round quarterback. I liked him. I liked Bo, the guy, coming out of Oregon because I knew what type of family he came from. I knew what type of guy he was, teammate he was, the way he worked, his football smarts. Like, he's got all the makings of someone that you just want to be around, that you want to be a part of your franchise. Like, if you're growing a business or a big company, Bo Nix is the type of guy you want because he's a stand-up guy. He works his tail off, and he's a man with conviction. He's a good young man, solid guy, Bo Nix. But as we found out throughout the course of the season, his rookie year in the NFL, he's a darn good quarterback. He also displayed arm strength that we weren't sure if he had because so many of his passes were either at or behind the line of scrimmage in college, but he can make all the throws. And also very underrated as an athlete. He can move, he can run, he can pick up yards when the play breaks down. He's your prototypical quarterback in the 21st century, a guy who can make throws on time, on target, but also be able to move and pick up first downs with his legs when things break down. So very impressive rookie season for Bo Nix, who passed for 29 touchdowns and threw just 12 picks and, got near that 4,000-yard mark. So he was terrific. It got off to a slow start. The Broncos lost their first two games at Seattle, at home against Pittsburgh, but slowly and surely Bo Nix and Sean Payton found some type of chemistry that they're able to build upon. And so I really am excited coming out of this season. Now, I predicted on Saturday night, I thought the Bills would win the game 42-10. They win it 31-7. So I was only 8 points off the differential. I knew what the Broncos were up against. Buffalo is a legitimate Super Bowl contender today. That's how good they are. And they've got an MVP candidate playing quarterback for them. Josh Allen is a terrific player. He's multi-dynamic. He's got an incredible arm, and he does things like John Elway used to do with his size and his strength and his mobility. He's a special player. They've got good playmakers on offense. They can do a lot of different things. They can win a championship right now. That's how good they are. The Broncos are in that next tier down. Playoff contender. They made the postseason, but they've got a lot of work to do to get to the level of a Buffalo Bills or Kansas City Chiefs or Baltimore Ravens. There's a big difference between those three teams, Kansas City, Buffalo, and Baltimore, and the rest of the teams that we saw in the first round of the AFC playoffs. There's just a big difference. There are three teams that have a legitimate chance to move out of the AFC: Baltimore, Kansas City, Buffalo. That's it. And in the NFC, it's probably down to two: Philadelphia and Detroit. Those are your teams. There are 5 teams right now with a legitimate chance to win a championship. But for you Bo Nix fans out there, you Bronco fans, and maybe it's more Bo Nix fans than Bronco fans, their total win number was set at 5.5. 5.5. And they were projected by Pro Football Focus and ESPN as having the worst roster in the NFL. So you're projected to win 5.5. You supposedly have the worst roster in the NFL, and yet you come out with a young roster, a roster that lacks talent, a rookie quarterback, and you win 10 games. And you get to the postseason for the first time since 2015, and it looks like they discovered their quarterback. The season was a smash success because they discovered Bo Nix. The playoffs were like frosting or some type of icing on the season. The most important thing was to draft your quarterback, play your quarterback, and see if you've discovered your franchise quarterback. And it looks like they have. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty darn sure that Bo Nix can be the guy. The one thing we do know about Bo Nix, he may not be an elite franchise quarterback. I think it's quite possible that he is, but he's definitely a starter in the NFL. The bottom line is they have a QB. And once you have that problem solved, think about it, for 9 years, and there are many teams in the same situation Denver's in. There are teams that have been in this situation for decades. When you don't have a quarterback, every offseason is, do you draft a quarterback? How are we going to find a quarterback? Should we look to trade for a quarterback? Should we bring in a veteran journeyman as a quarterback? Do we have the money to pay for a big-time quarterback in free agency? Can we trade and move up in the draft to get the quarterback we want? And those discussions continue on and on and on. Because until you have your guy, your quarterback, you have no chance to compete in the NFL. And so now for the first time in a decade, the Broncos enter an offseason knowing that that situation's been solved. So now you can look around at the rest of the roster and start to tinker and add playmakers and pieces that you lack in order to get your quarterback to the next level, to where you can truly compete against the better teams in the NFL. And that's the best place to be. So here's the advantage right now. You've got Sean Payton, one of the best coaches in the NFL. You discovered your quarterback in Bo Nix. The majority of key players are going to be back on the roster, under contract. Your offensive line is one of the best in the NFL. You've got the defensive player of the year in Patrick Surtain, and you're coming off a playoff berth. Now, needs are pretty simple. Bo Nix needs some playmakers. That offense lacks playmakers big time. It's Cortland Sutton and everybody else, and that's not enough. Also, the Broncos lack the ability to run the football consistently throughout the year. And as we're seeing in the NFL, and I'm going to talk about this here in about 10 minutes, running the football is critical. So the Broncos need to go to the draft and draft a true number one running back instead of this, committee nonsense. Get Ashton Genty. Draft a high-level running back. This draft is going to be loaded with backs, so get a high-level running back who can be your number one, the guy that gets the majority of the carries and can add some pop to the run game and balance to the offense for Bo Nix. They need a tight end because their group of tight ends are absolute garbage. They need a big nose tackle. Buffalo pushed them around with their offensive line yesterday, 44 carries for 210 yards. They need a middle linebacker and some help at safety. But that's a great offseason. When you don't have to talk about quarterback and you're like, okay, we could use a playmaker at receiver. We need a number one running back. We need a tight end. We need a big nose tackle. We could use a middle linebacker and a safety. Nowhere in there did I say anything about quarterback. So it's a great place to be. And I haven't been there in a while to see my team in that position. So the stress level drops because you have hope. You have hope because you have a quarterback. Everything's built around the quarterback. So props to Denver. Great season, massive success. Most importantly, you got Bo Nix. And don't overreact. If you're a Bronco fan, upset or bitter because they lost at Buffalo yesterday, then shame on you for thinking they had a chance to win that game. All right? Sometimes you just line up and you get your ass whooped because the other team is superior. Buffalo right now is superior to Denver. I truly believe that. Now, the Bills, well, it's pretty simple. They're good enough to win a championship right now. And the key is, unlike years past, they're no longer asking Josh Allen to be everything at all times. Yesterday, they didn't try to ask Josh to do too much because they ran the football so effectively with Cook. 44 carries, 210 yards. They just continued to run the football, possess the ball, and squeeze the life out of Denver. They're physical at the point of attack. Now, their defense is a concern. Their defense is a concern because they've given up plays throughout the year, and they're getting ready to take on two powerhouses. They get to host Baltimore and then go to Kansas City for a chance to go to the Super Bowl. That's brutal. We're going to host the Ravens, who are just white hot right now, and you're dealing with two MVP candidates at the same time in Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. And then we got to go deal with Patrick Mahomes. So that's going to be tough. So the defense is going to have to step up. The game's going to be incredible. This could go down as one of the all-time great playoff games because you have both quarterbacks. Either Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen will win the MVP award this year, and both are very deserving with their play. So how are they going to deal with that run game of Baltimore? The Ravens are going to run the football. They're going to try and be physical. We saw them do that against Pittsburgh, but I love Buffalo right now. They have a team that can win a championship. So the future's bright for Denver, but Buffalo is super legit. And think about that matchup. Kansas City, a bit of a break with Houston because they're so beat up, but it looks like we're going to get Kansas City and Baltimore or Kansas City and Buffalo in the AFC title game. And that's going to be great. All right, we'll keep things rolling. I want to talk more football, including the importance of the run game this time of year. Even with all the innovation in the NFL and the way teams are so pass happy, there are simple formulas for how you have success in the league, and it gets back to stopping the run and running the football. We'll talk about that next year on the Rip City Drive. Is it just me, or was I hearing Phil Collins on top of the Doobie Brothers right there? I like that. I'm looking at the Shaden Sharp commemorative glass right now. Shaden Sharp is the next that is up. And if you want to get a Shaden Sharp commemorative glass, the first two were Donovan Clingan and Scoot Henderson. Thursday night against the Clippers will be the Shaden Sharp glass. These are better and even sturdier than the sweet Dairy Queen glasses from back in the day. Just go to trailblazers.com, buy yourself a ticket for the game, and the first 7,777 fans will get a Shaden Sharp commemorative glass. So jump on it. It's going to be on Thursday for the 18th. Clippers, Trailblazers from Moda. And if you jump on that, you can get yourself a glass. And wait a second, that's not the 18th. What day is that, the 16th? Let's see, 14th is tomorrow. Yeah, the 16th, my bad. It's going to be for the Clipper game on Thursday. The first 7,777 fans. Tickets available now at trailblazers.com. Also, something that I'll get to later in the show that I want to share just some of my thoughts on. The Trailblazers, Ryan Flaherty, and others put together a terrific celebration of life event for Brian Wheeler. It was yesterday at Dr. Jack's, and there were a number of people there. And I just thought it was a beautiful event. We had a chance to hear from a number of people who worked with Wheels, who were friends of Brian Wheeler. And to have everyone together in that one spot, it was beautiful. So I'll share some thoughts on that and some takeaways, but big credit to the Trailblazers, Antonio Harvey, Rob Kloss, and everyone that was involved in putting that event together. It was awesome, and they deserve credit for that. And it was great to see everyone come together and really celebrate the life of Brian Wheeler, who, like Bill Schonely, raised an entire generation of Trailblazer fans with his work on the radio. And that's a very special connection. You know, play-by-play guys that you grow up with and that you connect with and they become a part of your life, that's a pretty big-time relationship right there. It certainly was for me, and I know it was for many of you. So I'll share some insights on that. I do want to talk NFL. I'm going to get to the running game in just a moment because if you want to win consistently come postseason time, there are certain things that you need to do well, and if you don't, you're going to be in trouble. But first things first, I want to have you hear from a couple of different participants in yesterday's game. We're talking about the Broncos' successful season, win total set at 5.5. They win 10, and they get to the postseason. Most importantly, they discover their future quarterback in Bo Nix from Oregon. And after the game, Bo had a chance to talk about the season. Here's some of his thoughts.
Tough game. Obviously enjoyed it being in the playoffs, but, wish could have played a little bit better today. But, overall, a lot to grow from, a lot to learn from, and then, we'll be able to do a lot this offseason and, grow from this and learn from it.
Yeah, Bo Nix, very steady, works his tail off. Teammates love him, and he was a playmaker this year, and he got the team to the postseason. Never in my lifetime have the Broncos drafted a quarterback and then developed him from day one. So I'm getting a chance to watch this for the first time, which is a lot of fun. Now, Sean Payton, his offense, well, it didn't do very well yesterday. They scored on the opening drive of the game, and they were shut out the rest of the way. 31-0 run by Buffalo, game over. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't throw the ball with consistency. They doinked a field goal off the upright. It just was a bad day for the offense as they really never could get on track, and Sean Payton takes the blame.
We didn't do nearly well enough. Time of possession was heavily tilted in their favor. We struggled consistently, whether it was third downs or running the football, and then, we never really had an answer to stop their running game. It starts with me, and it's always a tough pill to swallow, especially when it's a postseason game. But the second half, we just didn't play well enough.
Yeah, you didn't play well enough. They didn't coach well enough. They didn't play well enough. Most importantly, they were overmatched. Buffalo's just better than they are. And I think a lot of times people overreact to the coach and the play calling. And I love people that take shots at the coach for play calling. The one thing I know about the NFL is that it's far beyond my understanding. I think Sean Payton's fine. I think the bottom line is that he and Bo Nix need more playmakers on the offense so they can make that thing go. And once they get the right pieces in the right places as they continue to build this thing, and they're going to have a lot of cap room to work with, that Russell Wilson albatross is starting to free up. They've got to deal with some of that for one more year, but they're going to be able to add more pieces. And with more playmakers, that offense is going to be much more higher octane, which is great. And hopefully Vance Joseph, no disrespect, Vance, but I don't want you to leave as defensive coordinator, but he's going to interview for the Raiders job. He'll get some interviews, and well-deserved because he's coached his tail off. Hopefully he can come back, and they've got the same, group of assistants that have done a heck of a job with that team and development of some of the young players. Now, Josh Allen, a couple of interesting things with him. First off, just him talking about the offense. As I mentioned, he threw for almost 300 yards, had a couple of touchdowns, but they had great balance. Like 500 yards of total offense. They ran the ball for over 200 yards. He's not asked to do everything, and he talked about, just the entire offense at work.
Our team did a great job. Our offensive line did a great job of getting looks that we liked and taking advantage of it, and they moved guys off the ball today. Jimbo ran the ball hard, or all of our backs ran the ball hard, and then you incorporate some of the quarterback run stuff, and I think that really messes with the defense of, they were in a really good position sometimes, and our guys just made plays, and that's why we got so much faith in everybody in this room.
Yeah, balance is critical. Josh Allen can do everything, but it works a lot better when you don't have to ask him to be everything at all times. He's in a much better spot now. They've been patient. They've slowly built it up. They've got players around him. They still aren't, super legit at wide receiver, but, man, they've got a better offense now. They're more versatile. They're running the football, and they're committing to running the football. And Joe Brady, who runs the offense, is doing a heck of a job. Yeah, Buffalo was good. They just ran the ball and possessed the ball. I mean, it gave me anxiety because Denver couldn't get the ball. And there's nothing more frustrating than a team lining up and just getting like 5 or 6 yards of pop. And then when it was 4th and short, they just QB sneak it with Josh Allen. And he's so big and powerful. He's like a freaking lumberjack. He just leans into the offensive line and gets a first down. He's good. Now, the other part that was weird, and it's just annoying because we know that this stuff probably goes on with the star quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes. But there was a weird situation. I think it was early third. Buffalo had driven down into the red zone. And third down incomplete. And Josh Allen, I think he may have gotten sacked maybe. But he got up really ticked off because he thought there was holding on the play and they didn't throw the flag. And then they came back from commercial, and Bill Vinovich, the official, the ref, he was over on the Bills sideline where Josh was sitting down on the hot seat on the bench. And he was like massaging his shoulder and like apologizing or something. And Josh was asked about that after the game.
When the ref came over to talk to you, like all the way to the bench, what was he saying? What was going on?
Was that after I wasn't happy with what was going on, and I was yelling a little bit, and he just said, don't be yelling. So, my bad. Sorry to Bill.
Did he apologize?
I won't say anything about that.
So wait a second. He walked over there to massage you on the bench to let you know not to yell at him? I find that hard to believe. What I think happened is that he probably went over and was like, dude, I'm sorry. We missed the call. And we'll make it up to you. We'll make it up to you next time. But he was giving him a massage.
A massage.
You cannot massage the starting quarterback if you're an NFL ref, for crying out loud. Keep your ass out there at midfield, and if the guys need to talk to you, they can roll up on you. You don't walk over to the one of the team's bench. How do you think the home fans there in Buffalo, how do you think the Mafia would have liked it if Bill Vinovich was over there massaging Bo Nix during the game? You think that would have elicited a few boos? Gosh, it's just like, these quarterbacks, it's so bad now. They go out of their way to protect the quarterbacks. We saw it with Tom Brady. We see it with Patrick Mahomes, now Josh Allen. These quarterbacks whining and complaining all the time, and they always get their way. And that's just, it comes with the territory when you're a great quarterback, I guess. But I've never seen a ref over on the bench. I'm surprised Josh didn't ask me if he wanted to take a seat for a moment. Hey, Bill, why don't you sit down, man? Let's talk about this. He had his hand on his shoulders. Like, Bill, what are you doing? You're a freaking ref. What are you, a Bills fan? Why don't you just drop on a Bills uniform, you weirdo? You don't go over there and massage Josh Allen because he's upset because you didn't throw a flag for holding. That's bizarre. I mean, you have to admit that's a little bit weird. Almost as weird as the Tampa Bay kicker, Zane Gonzalez, rubbing his head about 50 times before he lined up to kick that field goal to win the game, and he doinked it. He gave me anxiety. There are certain kickers. I don't trust kickers. Only a couple in history that I'm like, okay, you can really, like Adam Vinatieri. You knew when he stepped on the field he was probably going to come through in the clutch. But most kickers are just a step away from being a basket case. And I guess Zane Gonzalez has OCD. Did you see that when he walked out on the field? He started to put his helmet on like 10 times, but he kept rubbing his dome. Like he was fixing his hair. I'm like, you're about to put your helmet on, man. You've got helmet head. Just put that thing on and go out there and make the kick. It gave me anxiety. I don't like to see kickers. I don't know what their process is, but kickers that are weird like that, they make me nervous. And he probably made his teammates nervous too, but he made the kick. He doinked it in off the upright. Wild. What's that guy doing? Hey, Zane, what's wrong with you? How come the official wasn't over there massaging Zane Gonzalez before the kick? He was nervous, man. He needed some help. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. So I do think Buffalo, look, they're legit. And this game against Baltimore is going to be awesome. Both teams are great. And both teams have the ability to go into Kansas City and potentially upset Mahomes and the Chiefs and derail their attempt at a three-peat. That game's going to be great this weekend. Looking forward to it. Now, there's one thing I wanted to say. You know, the NFL, and this has been the case ever since I was young watching the NFL. The NFL has changed over the course of time. Now it's more of a passing league. They protect the quarterbacks. Teams want to, move the football through the air. They want to move the chains, pick up the chunk plays. It's all about the quarterbacks, and you need a high-level quarterback to have a chance to compete for a championship. We all know that. But the one thing that is tried and true in the NFL come postseason time, especially when you're playing outside in the conditions, if you can stop the run and run the football, you're going to have a great chance to advance. And more importantly, you've got a great chance to win a championship. And just take a look at the games this weekend. We start with the Chargers at the Texans. Now, keep in mind, L.A., for some reason, was a 3-point favorite going into that game. They were expected to win. And there were a lot of people that had a lot of money on the Chargers and thought they were going to win that game. But they didn't. Justin Herbert played an awful game, was picked 4 times. I think he had 3 interceptions all season. He got picked off 4 times in one game, and the Texans blow out the Chargers 32-12. But take a look at these numbers here. The Houston rushing attack, 168 yards. They average 5 yards a carry. The Chargers, who are supposed to be a physical team, or at least Jim Harbaugh wants them to be that team, 50 yards on 18 carries, 2.8 yards a rush, and no touchdowns. And they get housed, 32-12. You move on to the Ravens and the Steelers. Now, keep in mind, Pittsburgh, for basically all of my life and most of your life, they're known as one thing: defensive-minded, physical football team, and they want to be strong in the trenches. Or at least we thought. Baltimore, 299 yards rushing, 6 yards a pop, 2 touchdowns, and the Steelers, 29 yards on 11 carries. Less than 3 yards a rush. That is brutal. And the Ravens did whatever they wanted. Derrick Henry, 186 yards. He had 2 scores. And Lamar Jackson dicing up the defense, 81 yards on 15 carries. Not to mention, he was nearly flawless in the pass game. 16 of 21, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He was sacked once. But 299-29. They were over 200 yards more rushing than Pittsburgh. Move on to the Bills and Broncos on Sunday morning. Buffalo, 210 yards on 44 carries. The Broncos, like we've seen throughout the year, pretty meager, 79 yards on 17 carries. No balance. Buffalo controlled the ball, controlled the clock, and they dominated the football game. And in that game for Buffalo, 41 minutes of possession to only 18 for Denver. Game over, 31-7. Eagles, Packers, physical football game. Eagles are tough at the line of scrimmage. They probably have the best roster in football. They outrush the Green Bay Packers 169-107. They average 5 yards a rush. Saquon Barkley, 119 yards on the ground. And when you add in the balance, Jalen Hurts, 2 touchdowns, no picks. He was 13 of 21, and they just methodically squeezed the life out of the pack. They didn't play a great game, but they dominated at the line of scrimmage, and they ran the football. That's how you do it. Now, the only oddity was Tampa Bay and Washington. Tampa Bay outrushed the Commanders 101-82. But the big difference here was 1 turnover in the game, which proved to be a big one on the Baker Mayfield fumble. So all I'm saying is that, if you want to win football games come postseason time, having balance on offense, but most importantly, being able to line up, run the football, possess the ball, and win battles at the line of scrimmage, that's how you get the job done. And look at what we're going to have in the upcoming divisional round, which is going to be terrific, by the way. You're going to have teams, they're going to be looking to be physical and want to have balance on offense. Saturday will be the Texans at the Chiefs. 1:30 kick on ESPN and ABC. Right now, Kansas City is favored by 7.5. The evening game on Saturday, 5 o'clock kick on Fox. Commanders at the Lions. Detroit favored by 8.5. The winner of tonight's game with the Rams and Vikings, they'll play Sunday at noon on NBC at Philadelphia. And then you've got the game of the weekend, 3:30 on Sunday, CBS, Ravens at the Bills. Baltimore favored by 1. The only downside to the Ravens-Bills game is that means we're going to have to listen to Tony Romo some more. I can't take any more Tony Romo. I didn't get into the Tony Romo hype when he was predicting plays before they happened when he first started. I don't like his over-talking. I don't like his coked-out, weirdness on the broadcast. Stop talking over Jim Nantz. Can you please do that for me, Tony? I know you can't, but would you please shut your mouth? You're destroying the broadcast. Jim Nantz he's the gold standard, Tony. He doesn't need your help. He doesn't need you talking over him. He doesn't need you being coked out and acting crazy on air. Just settle down. Can they do something? Can you, does he need medication? Tony Romo's out of control, and he ruins the broadcast. I had to go mute. There are certain broadcasters, and right now at the top of the list, Tony Romo and Stan Van Gundy. When I see those guys and I hear them start to get the diarrhea of the mouth, I just go right to the mute button. Nope, they've got nothing I need except annoying me. It makes my skin crawl. You have to be really bad because the games are usually so good that I don't pay attention to the broadcasters. But there are times where it's like, why does this guy keep talking? Why is Romo still running his pie hole and trampling on Jim Nantz? Jim Nantz is great at everything. Tony Romo is a disaster. So there you go. That's my two no-no lists right now. Stan Van Gundy and Tony Romo. And they can battle it out. Put them in the octagon. They can battle for the worst broadcaster right now in sports. Like tonight, though, you get, Troy Aikman and Buck. Buck and Aikman are great. Troy Aikman is awesome. Troy Aikman understands how to play off his play-by-play man and doesn't overtalk. It's really bizarre. I mean, crazy bizarre. So there you go. That's where we're at. Next weekend's going to be great. Now, with the rest of this weekend, that kick by Zane Gonzalez, doink, it's good, and the Commanders move on. They win their first playoff game in 19 years.
Snap good, hold down, kick on its way. It is good! The Cardiac Commanders are the clutch Commanders. They do it again. We'll see you in Detroit.
And Zane Gonzalez kicks in the door and kicks us into the second round of the playoffs.
Wow. It's pretty exciting right there.
Love it.
Now, Jaden Daniels was awesome. Dan Quinn was asked about Daniels, very calm nature in the clutch.
Jaden certainly is a big factor in that. I think if he had his heart rate monitor on in mind, they would not be the same in the game. And his stays pretty consistently good. Sometimes I'm like the duck. If you just saw the feet going under the water, it's good. But he really is into that space, exceptional.
He had the big scramble late. He's incredibly accurate with the football. He's very mobile. His ability to run, it puts the defense in a bind. He's going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, and deservedly so. But he's been doing this stuff ever since he was a freshman at Arizona State. Clutch, and knows how to make big-time throws, and guys gravitate towards him. There's certain athletes you look at or you get a glimpse at, and you're like, that's a pro. And that's what I see with Jaden Daniels. From the very first time I saw him play in person at Arizona State, I was like, okay, that guy's legit. And then he went on to LSU, won a Heisman, and now the rest is history. He's got Washington back on track. Credit to that entire coaching staff. The new ownership group, they brought in Dan Quinn, and Dan Quinn is very good at surrounding himself with good coaches, the right people. And they hired Cliff Kingsbury, who's been a mastermind. Cliff Kingsbury's great because he doesn't try to change the guys that he's got. He looks at what they do best, and he puts them in a position to succeed. And that's what he's done with Jaden Daniels. And that team's got a bright, bright future. Look at the teams right now with the good young quarterbacks. Washington's future's bright. Denver, probably New England now that they got Mike Vrabel. You get the young quarterback, and it makes everything a lot easier. And Jaden Daniels, look, I know this. Detroit's tough, and I would expect the Lions to win that game, but they can absolutely move the football in that beat-up defense. That's going to be a fun game. All right, we'll keep things rolling. Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio, will stop by at 4:20 to talk some NFL. If you want to jump on board, 503-248-0620. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys are going to part ways. I think that was pretty well known. When you have a coach that enters a season without a contract extension, he's a lame duck. So it's not a surprise that Mike McCarthy is going to move on and the Cowboys will look for a new coach. I'm not a big fan of McCarthy. He's kind of boring to me. I felt like the Cowboys could have done better. Now it's going to be incumbent upon Jerry Jones and his family to make the right hire. And what Jerry needs to do is sack up and be aggressive and bring in a big-time coach who can help get that franchise back on track. And like he did with Parcells, he needs to be willing to have someone that will come in and challenge him. He doesn't need a yes man. He needs someone that will come in and help get things on track. I like Jerry Jones. I think he's super cool, and I wouldn't mind seeing him have a chance to win another championship before he dies. I'm just a fan of Jerry. I think he's cool. There aren't too many owners like him. There aren't too many owners that will have weekly radio hits where he'll challenge guys on air. It's wild to me. I love it. He's crazy, but I like a little crazy. I'm not a Cowboys fan. I hate anyone that tells me that, oh, we're America's team. I'm instantly going to hate you. If you try to convince me that you're America's team, I'll decide who America's team is. I don't need you to tell me you're America's team. It's all nonsense to me. But Jerry Jones is a fascinating guy, very fascinating, and he wants to win. And I'm not one of those guys who, like, if you buy a team and you invest that type of capital in a franchise and you want to be involved, you have every right to do that. This whole idea that an owner should just buy the team and cut checks and keep out of the way and let the people he hires do whatever he hired them to do, I mean, it sounds kind of nice, but I think it's a little bit weird. You would do the same thing. Like, if you bought a team and you were running a pro franchise, you would want to be involved too. Now, you obviously want to hire good people and empower them, but you would want to be involved. So I don't know. I like Jerry, but his hires and his patience with some of the coaches he's brought in, a little bit weird. I don't think Coach Prime is going to go to the NFL. Now, if the Cowboys had the number one pick and a chance to draft Shador, maybe he might consider it. But from everything I've taken from Coach Prime, he believes that college is where he's supposed to be. He believes that helping develop young men is his calling. He truly believes that. And if you're Coach Prime and you're at Colorado, you've got free reign to do whatever you want. You can run the program the way you want. You'll have full power behind you with the university to do it however you want. You can recruit the players you want. You've got full power and command of the program. There aren't too many coaches that have as much power with their program in college like Coach Prime does. You know, Colorado will bend anything in any way or any direction that Coach Prime wants. And that's a great place to be. Now, it's going to be tempting. You know, when the Dallas Cowboys come a knocking, it's going to be a lot of temptation because that's a big-time brand. That's big-time football. And if you can do it in Dallas, you become legendary.
How hard do you think it is there to win now, Chad? Just considering how long it's been. And I kind of laughed a little bit over here when you mentioned America's team because I like to ask someone like me who's 28 years old, and in my entire life they've been terrible. So they are most certainly not America's team to me. But it's fascinating because I just wonder if it's like almost like the Knicks of the NBA, right, where it's been so long since they've been able to, get over that hump. You know, McCarthy had some moments, sure, but I'm kind of with you. I'm not sure what they need. It's an interesting spot.
Well, they need a quarterback, number one. You can win games with Dak, but to win a championship, they need a different quarterback. But most importantly, they need a fresh set of eyes and someone with conviction, someone that can lay a foundation and really change around the culture in there. I think that's going to be critical. So we'll see what happens with Dallas. Mike McCarthy, he'll have strong interest from both the Saints and the Chicago Bears. Mike McCarthy's had success. He'll get another job. Vance Joseph is going to interview with the Raiders and the Jets. He's the Broncos defensive coordinator. He used to be the head coach of Denver. He's had great success as a coordinator, and he's put himself back in a position to get a head coaching job. Now, the one I'm really interested in is Pete Carroll. I think it's today or tomorrow. He's interviewing with the Raiders. I think he's got a great chance to land that job. And if I'm the Raiders, I would put strong consideration in bringing in Pete. I know he's older, but he's still got a lot of energy. Most importantly, he's got a strong desire to coach, but exactly what they need. Someone that can come in with a proven track record of success, that knows how to build a culture, lay a foundation, and get them back on the winning track. Pete Carroll can do all of that. He did it at USC. He did it with the Seahawks, and he's well connected around the league, so he can, compile a pretty good staff, I would guess. Wouldn't surprise me to see Pete Carroll to the Raiders. Now, I've got selfish reasons for that. One, I would love to see the rivalry once again renewed between Pete Carroll and Jim Harbaugh. Those two guys probably don't like each other. They had run-ins with USC and Stanford. They had run-ins with the 49ers and Seahawks. And if that was rekindled in an AFC West duel 2 times a year, that would be nice. But I think Pete Carroll can still coach, and I think the Raiders right now need someone that can come in and provide direction and lay a foundation. And Pete Carroll has done that. He's got plenty of experience. That's what I think Chicago needs, too, is a Pete Carroll type. That's why I thought Chicago would have been wise to just, load up the Brinks truck and give it to Mike Vrabel, because he's a culture builder. He's got a strong spine. He's one of those guys that will tell people no. And you've got a kind of a messy ownership situation there in Chicago, so they're going to need someone that will come in and not be a yes man, but be very direct about what they need to get things on track and what they need to develop their quarterback. But it's the Bears. It's the same teams at the top of the draft every year. The Bears are a disaster. They were stupid last year. You knew you were going to have access to Caleb Williams. Why'd you keep Eberflus? They should have went out to hire the right coach at that time to make sure they put their rookie quarterback in the best position to succeed, but they didn't. And instead, they left him with a lame duck coach who got fired before the end of the season, and it became a mess. But that's what you expect from the Bears and the Jets and the Titans and the other crappy teams that are always at the top, especially the Browns. They really suck. So, and what a mess. It's a messy situation. But you got to be smart in how you hire these guys. Like with the Broncos, they went out and got Sean Payton, and he turned around and drafted a young quarterback. And now they've got coach and quarterback figured out, so their future's bright. Those are the 2 most important positions, coach, quarterback. And once you've got that solved, you're in a good spot. That's why the Commanders are so impressive this year. Dan Quinn is a smart guy. That ownership group did a heck of a job of compiling a staff, and now you've got a rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels who's a star, and he's working with Cliff Kingsbury, who's also going to be highly sought after. And we'll see. The great thing about this year, I think Kingsbury just recently mentioned it, that this season helped him rediscover his love for the game. And that's because he's doing what he's best at, which is running an offense and working with a young quarterback and putting him in the best position to succeed. All right, we'll come back, and I'll share some thoughts with the event I was at yesterday to honor the life of Brian Wheeler. A heck of a job by the Trailblazers to put on that event. Brian Noe, Fox Sports Radio, will join us at 4:20 to focus on what we saw this weekend in the wild card. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing.
From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, 4 o'clock chat here. Wildcard weekend will continue tonight with the final game. Vikings and Rams from Glendale, Arizona. Minnesota favored by 3. Winner will face Philadelphia in the divisional round. That game was moved to Zona due to the wildfires in Southern California. Kickoff at 5 on ESPN and ABC. Elsewhere, Mike McCarthy will not return as Cowboys head coach. According to Vegas, Coach Prime has got the best odds to land a job at 3-1, followed by Cliff Kingsbury, Joe Brady, and Lincoln Riley. Mike McCarthy expected to have big interest from both the Saints and the Bears. The Patriots introduced Mike Vrabel as their next head coach, 16th in franchise history. He indicated Drake May was one of the top reasons for taking that job. The divisional round will begin Saturday at 1:30 on ABC and ESPN. Texans at the Chiefs. KC favored by 7.5. The Trailblazers back in action tomorrow. They continue their 5-game homestand. Nets are in town. That tip-off at 7. Our coverage will start at 5 with Blazers Game Day.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio.
All right, hope you're enjoying your Monday. It's not raining. We've had some dry weather lately, which is nice. It was a little bit chilly this morning. I think 33 degrees when I was taking my daughter to school. A little frosty out there. Brian No, Fox Sports Radio, is going to warm things up for us coming up in 20 minutes. We'll talk ball with him, and then we'll focus in on my Denver Broncos at 5:20 with Ryan Edwards, 850 KOA. I'm very excited about the future for the first time in like 10 years. Because they found a quarterback. That's the most important thing. And I know fans, it's social media drives me crazy sometimes. Fans get so ticked off because their team gets beat. There are just sometimes where you have to understand what your team is, what they aren't, and what they're up against. And Buffalo was a heavy favorite for a good reason. They're playing at home. They're one of the best teams in the NFL. They're a legitimate Super Bowl contender. And Denver right now is in the beginning stages of a rebuild that exceeded all expectations this year. Their win total was set at 5.5. They opened the season at 0-2, and they finished with 10 wins. 10 wins. So they went 10-5 down the stretch and made the postseason. And they got Bo Nix. So they have a lot to be excited about. Anytime you don't have to worry about the quarterback position going into the offseason, you're in a winning position. The big game on Sunday, this coming Sunday, will be Buffalo and Baltimore. What a game that is. A 1-point favorite the Bills are over the Ravens. Buffalo needs to win to advance and have a rematch with Kansas City. Baltimore is trying to do what they have not been able to do with Lamar Jackson, and that's get to a Super Bowl. They got beat in the AFC title game at home last year by Mahomes and the Chiefs, and they're looking to exercise some demons. What a heck of a game that's going to be. Physical, tough, and the 2 MVP candidates in Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. It's a great game. Can't wait for that one. It's going to be good. So Brian Noble will talk all things football coming up in 20 minutes. Yesterday, and I'd gotten notice, I don't know, it was a few weeks ago, but the Trailblazers organized an event, a celebration of life event for Brian Wheeler. And it was yesterday at Dr. Jack's in the afternoon. And so I went down, and I took my daughter Kaylee with me. She wanted to go and work out, and so I was taking her to my buddy's club where I work out to train her when we were done. And I didn't want to make 2 trips into town, so I said, hey, do you mind, coming with me? So I gave her a breakdown and the history of Brian Wheeler and the work that he had done and the work I had done with him and the relationship I had with him and explained it all to Kaylee, and she went with me. And when I got there, I was blown away. I didn't know what to expect. I haven't been to too many celebration of life events in my lifetime. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm younger and the majority of people that I've grown up with have not passed away yet. But this was a well-done event. And I credit the Portland Trailblazers. When Brian Wheeler passed away suddenly, they honored him at a game earlier this year. They had a moment of silence. We honored him on the radio broadcast. They honored him on the television broadcast. He was really close with Kevin Calabro for many, many years. And, it was middle of the season. So I think the Trailblazers were struggling as to what more they could do. And I had cross paths with Ryan Flaherty, who works for the Trailblazers at Motorcell one night, and he said, hey, we're working on something, and we'll have details pretty soon. So they put it together. It was at Dr. Jack's yesterday, so I took Kaylee down. And there were a lot of people there. And a lot of ex-Trailblazers were there. A lot of broadcasters were there. There were some Blazer fans there, family, friends, you name it. And multiple people had a chance to get up and speak and address the crowd. Kevin Calabro was terrific. He shared a lot of thoughts and talked about his relationship with Brian Wheeler. Brian Wheeler spent time in Chicago. Of course, he did games for Loyola Chicago. He spent time in Seattle. He actually worked for my boss at KJR up in Seattle. He spent time down in Sacramento with the Monarchs before he got the opportunity to be the play-by-play guy for the Portland Trailblazers. And the cool thing about Wheels, much like Sean's, taking over for a legend in Sean's is not easy, but Wheels was able to do that. And then in the process, he raised an entire generation of Trailblazer fans. I grew up with Sean's, but I also had the full span of Brian Wheeler as well. So I got a little bit of both. I started listening to Sean's in the late 80s, 87. And so I was with Sean's throughout the rest of his career. And then I was with Brian Wheeler the entire time. And I had a chance to work with him on his show, Wheels at Work, Wheels at Night. And we became friends. And he was awesome because he was a superstar talent. But I think it was Rich Patterson yesterday, the captain, who said this, that because of his insecurities and some of the issues when he grew up, he never understood his greatness. I would believe that to be true. I mean, he was a Hall of Fame talent. He's one of the best play-by-play guys I've ever heard in my life. He was awesome. I mean, just truly awesome. But he didn't really realize that. But he was always gracious with his time. He was kind to everyone. I went to multiple events with him, concerts, dinners. We would hang out. I never paid for anything. He wouldn't let me. He would always go out of his way to take care of everybody. He was very generous, like that all the time, which was really cool. And that's just the way he operated. Very, very generous, very nice. And like many of us, he had issues, demons, which I can relate to because I've been there and done that. But for Brian, it was, his weight. Struggled to keep his weight down. Struggled with the food addiction. And I think the way he explained it to me was, because of his upbringing, being in a household with people that weren't kind to him, he would go and hide out in his room and watch TV, and he would take food in his room to stay away from the troubles in the rest of the house. And so food became his comfort. And because of that, he dealt with health and weight issues throughout the course of his life because of the trauma from a very early age. So I was always drawn to him because of the difficulties he had to overcome to become who he was. And it became difficult at the end. His weight, his health became an issue, which prevented him from being able to do his job. And then the last couple of years, it was a complete derail for Wheels. It was very sad, very difficult. And it was hard for a lot of people who knew him that were close with him because he needed money. And he would ask people for money. And so that made it very difficult because there was conflict there. And I guess the biggest thing that I regret is I didn't spend the time with him that I should have in the end because I didn't want to deal with the conflict and the issues. And I know I'm not the only one that felt that way. And so that's the sad part. But Wheels, the great thing about yesterday is that you can let all that other stuff go and just celebrate Wheels for what he was. He was a great friend, very generous, and one of the most incredible radio talents of all time. And really, that's all of us, right? None of us are without blemish. We all have issues. But I hope that when I pass that I can get half the people to show up and share the same type of stories that we got yesterday. So Calabro spoke. Rob Kloss got up, former Oregon Duck. Rob Kloss is a terrific human being. He spoke, but what he did was collect stories. He had different people who were close to Wheels write stories and share their experiences with Wheels. I thought that was really nice. And Bobby Medina, who worked with the Trailblazers and was really close with Wheels, got up and spoke for an extended period of time. Antonio Harvey was kind of the host of the event. I love Tone. I've known him for a long time. Used to work with him in the mornings on radio. And I've really grown closer to him over the years because I have a lot of respect for him. But he broke down and started crying. And I'd never seen Tone show that type of vulnerability before. So I thought that was pretty special. But it was just good. That was well done by the Trailblazers. So credit to Ryan Flaherty. Joe Cronin was there. He showed up to represent. But they put that event together. It was great. And it was great to see people celebrating the life of Wheels. So, but that's my biggest regret. I didn't spend the time with him that I could have in the end. And I regret it. So if you're in that situation, even if things are difficult for whatever the reasons may be, don't miss out on the opportunity to spend time with someone in the end. Because once it's gone, you don't get that chance back. You're going to regret it. But it was cool. My daughter, I didn't know how she would handle that, but she enjoyed seeing people showing their appreciation and respect to Wheels. And she enjoyed hearing the stories about Wheels. And so I was able to introduce her to a number of different people. And I introduced her to Joe Cronin, and later on she goes, "Who was the tall guy with the bald head?" And I said, "Oh, that's Joe Cronin. He's the Trailblazers general manager." And she's like, "Oh." So there you go. I saw Jay Allen. Hadn't seen him in a while.
How is Jay, man?
I don't know. He didn't really talk to me.
Oh, okay.
He was busy doing other stuff. Rob Kloss was there. I saw the principal, Curtis Long, Nick Krupke, Adam Bjarnson, Dwight James, Kerry Agers. I only got to talk to a few because the room was so packed and everyone was busy talking. I had a chance to meet Rich Burke's wife for the first time. She's a sweetheart. Yeah, a lot of good people there. A lot of ex-Blazers. Chris Dudley was on hand. Terry Porter was there. There were some guys from the early days who were on hand. So it was great. Wheels had a relationship with a lot of different people. He came in contact with a lot of people over the years. But credit to the Trailblazers, Ryan Flaherty, Sherry Hansen, everyone that put that together. Joe Cronin, that was well done. Very good event. And he would have enjoyed that. If Wheels would have been there, could have seen that, seen the way people were celebrating his life, I think he would have appreciated it. And I thought the captain, Rich Patterson, he was one of the guys asked to speak. The captain worked every single game with Wheels. Every game that Wheels called, the captain, Rich Patterson, was a part of that. So they grew close because they spent so much time together. And then their families became close. And Mike Barrett was there. Yeah, there were a lot of people there. But well done. It was good. And I like those type of events. So instead of it being like a funeral, you have people getting together to share stories and to remember some of the good times and to have some laughs. And with Brian Wheeler, you'd always have a lot of laughs. So there you go. For you Blazer fans out there wondering how the Blazers were going to handle that situation with Brian Wheeler, who meant so much to the franchise, they did it with class and the celebration of life for Brian Wheeler. All right, it's time to celebrate some of the wild card weekend. Brian No, Fox Sports Radio, who I love to talk ball with. He'll join us next. We'll get his take on what he saw this week and what he thinks is going to go down tonight with the Rams and Vikings. And then we'll focus in on Buffalo and Baltimore and some of the head coaching positions. Who does Dallas need to hire? What about the Bears? Should the Raiders hire Pete Carroll? We'll talk with Brian No up next on the Rip City Drive. Oh, yeah. My brother from Fox Sports Radio, Mr. Brian O, is joining me once again. What's up, Bino?
What is going on, Chad? Doing NFL playoffs are finally we got some drama last night. That was a beautiful game with Tampa and the Jaden Daniels Washington Commanders. That was a great game.
Yeah, it was awesome. I'll tell you what, I don't need to see Zane Gonzalez walk out on the field to kick a game-winning field goal ever again. It's like, dude, you're going to give me a heart attack. Stop rubbing your head.
I know. That was crazy. I texted that to the Sunday Show group,
Yes.
and someone hit me back with he's got like chronic anxiety or no, it's something like this. Like I'm trying to find the text exactly because I'm like, oh, shoot, I kind of feel bad now where he's got like OCD to the nth degree or something like that. But yeah, man, you talk about a kicker walking onto the field and not putting you at ease if you're either a Commanders fan or backing the Commanders with a bet. He did not look like to be like the calming influence right there at all.
Well, Jaden Daniels has been so much fun to watch this year. You know, I'm a big Arizona State fan, so I've been watching him ever since he was young at Arizona State, and he's been the same type of guy. I guess what I appreciate about him as a rookie, very calm and composed in those clutch situations, fourth quarter drives where you need to have big plays. What do you think about his performance late?
Jaden Daniels,
Yes.
he's just, dude, the guy is special, man. And you saw it last night, and it's like, I remember talking to you early in the regular season, Chad, when Jaden Daniels was fantastic against the Bengals.
That's right. Late.
And, yeah, he was great the whole game. He was clutch late. And I put something on Twitter/X and said, man, this guy, he's got the goods, something like that. Just really impressed with this guy. And I got some pushback where it was like, well, the Bengals defense is greatly regressed. And I just think about that with last night's performance. He's had an entire regular season where he's shown that he's special. And you could play that card last night a little bit where you're like, well, Tampa's pass defense, one of the worst in the leagues. I think the but is wearing out with Jaden Daniels. At some point, you have to look at how poised the guy is. That was the first road playoff win for a rookie quarterback in quite some time. I think you have to go all the way back to like 2012, something like that. And so he's just checking these boxes one after another. Clutch play, looks poised, road playoff win as a rookie. At what point do you stop pushing back? I think it's been time to stop pushing back on Jaden Daniels being special because that's exactly what he is.
Yeah, next weekend, I expect Detroit to win, but I know this. With the injuries Detroit sustained on defense, Washington will be able to move the football, and Jaden Daniels will have an opportunity to make plays. That's an underrated, very good game next weekend.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. The total, by the way, for gambling, Chad, is 55.5.
That's a big number.
55 and a half. I'll tell you what, man, that Washington rush defense, not great. Jahmyr Gibbs is like, bring it on, man. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to go ballistic, but yeah, you could see a lot of offensive fireworks in that game next week.
I feel bad for Baker. He had a great year, and he's really matured as an individual and a quarterback. But that late fumble, that's going to drive him crazy all season, all offseason.
I know it. I know. That was just such – I told my girl last night, it's one thing if – you know, it's Peanut Tillman just punches the ball out or a defensive player just cracks the ball carrier and they cough it up. That's one thing. But for it to be one of those where it's just totally on you, you just didn't execute it at all. Maybe you called for the ball a little bit too early and the timing was just screwed up. It was just totally and completely on Tampa fumbling that away. That's way worse than a defensive player making a good play. That drives you crazy too. But when it's just completely on you, I think that's way worse, and that's exactly what happened with Tampa. That is such a bad way to lose a game, and that was the key play. That's what lost the game for them.
All right, I got to talk about Gambling No for just a moment. I know from talking to the manager of the Spirit Mountain Sportsbook that there was a lot of money flowing in on the Chargers before that game against the Texans, because they were laying 3. Did you wager on that game? Because I know a lot of people lost money. 4 picks for Justin Herbert, and they just got blasted by the Texans. I'm not surprised the Texans won, but the way it went down was pretty shocking.
Yeah, I didn't bet on the side. I had a couple of prop bets that worked out. I took Justin Herbert, his in-game passing yards, because once they got down by enough, I'm like, they have no choice but to keep throwing it. So that got there. Herbert throwing all those picks.
Wow.
I also had an in-game over on Stroud, because I'm like, they just can't stop the passing game. And it would have hit, except Herbert kept throwing picks. and the Texans are like, let's just run the clock out here. So that one didn't get there. But overall, to answer your question, it was more props than it was a side, because I was just like, look, man, the Chargers and the Texans, they're both goofy teams. Could I see the Chargers winning? Sure. Could I see the Texans winning at home? Absolutely. So I stayed away from that part of it, which was probably a wise move, because whether you like the Texans or the Chargers, I doubt many people said, oh, Texans by 20. Who was saying that before the game?
Nobody.
That's what happened. Yeah.
Do you think they can provide any resistance to Kansas City next weekend?
Yeah, I think they can provide a little bit of resistance, but I'd be really surprised to see them win that game. I think the overlooked thing about KC is their offense looked a lot better toward the end of the regular season.
Oh, no question.
Right? Like, you started to see the passing game come to life a little bit more, getting a little healthier.
Yep, Brown is back. Yep.
Yeah, I really want to see Isaiah Pacheco, because he's been one of their bigger weapons, but he's just not healthy right now. And so if you could get that ground game working and complementing the pass game that I think is emerging, now you're cooking with grease. Their rush defense has been good all season long. They need to get Justin Watson back, one of their DBs, who's really good and really underrated. They've missed him a lot. I think he's on schedule to be back for the playoffs. So if you get him back, KC's going to be really, really tough. And how crazy is it too, Chad, where these two teams played in the regular season just a few weeks ago, and that's where Tank Dell suffered that hideous injury.
Horrible.
Yeah, and that was a close game, but no Tank Dell in this spot. That makes the odds even longer for Houston.
I would agree. Now, Buffalo took out Denver 31-7. I think what impressed me the most about the win was Buffalo's final numbers. Josh Allen was highly productive, but they ran it 44 times for over 200 yards, and they had 41 minutes of possession. I guess Buffalo's in a position now where it looks like they're not going to ask Josh to do everything. That balance makes them pretty dangerous. What do you think about Buffalo moving forward?
Yeah, Buffalo's they're a tough out, and at home against Lamar and the Ravens, what a great matchup that is, man.
Give it to me right now.
Yes, I love that matchup, and I just wonder how much passing we're going to see in that game, because I think with Buffalo, they're going to have to throw it more. You go back to the regular season game, the Ravens just played smash mouth, and there wasn't anything Buffalo could do about it. And you look at what the Ravens did last week against Pittsburgh, we know their running game is a handful to deal with.
Oh, my goodness.
And Buffalo's rush defense isn't the best. Now, you flip it around, James Cook was fantastic yesterday. I'm sorry, Chad, against your Broncos. But against the Ravens have had one of the better rush defenses
one of the best in
football.
The NFL.
Yeah. So Josh Allen, I think it's going to be a Josh Allen show. You know, it's him. He's going to be a big part of their running game. And it's going to be on him to throw it enough to put the Bills in a position to win the game. So I'm expecting a lot more passing from Buffalo than I am the Ravens. And that's not to undersell Lamar, because Lamar has put up MVP numbers this season. I just think that the Bills are going to have to rely on the passing game a lot more than the Ravens will most likely need to.
It is such a ridiculous tandem between Lamar and Derrick Henry. I mean, seriously, we saw it against Pittsburgh. When you put up 300 yards rushing on Pittsburgh, you're doing something right. Like I just hope they don't forget who they are like they did last year against Kansas City. Go in there and do what you do best and physically try to push them around, because if they get the run game going early, Buffalo's going to have issues stopping it. You know it and I know it, and that's going to be critical. But if Josh Allen can get hot early and get Buffalo an early lead, it could take Baltimore out of their comfort zone a bit. So that whole matchup's fascinating.
It really is. And like that's the thing, too, is Lamar is so dynamic as a runner.
Ridiculous.
He'll gain like 5 yards, and you'll be like, that's kind of a win for the defense. You know, like it's insane. Like, it does make me wonder. They're not going to go straight like Army.
Yes.
You know, their quarterback, Bryson Daly, he would just carry it. But it does make you wonder. Lamar, He had how many carries? 15 carries last week for 81 yards against the Steelers. It makes you wonder if they just said, you know what? It's going to be Lamar and Derrick Henry this whole game. Like, I think the Ravens could win a game like
100%.
that.
If they made a commitment, we're going to run it 50 times plus in this game, they could do it and have great success because they're elite. Those two guys are different than everybody else. And Derrick Henry's, I don't remember a running back in my lifetime that has gotten better with age. That's how crazy he is, man. He's gotten better with age. I've never seen anything like it. So I can't wait for it. Now, I'm not asking for a full-on prediction, but what does your early gut tell you in that game? Who do you like?
Man, my early gut is the Ravens just wet themselves in spots like this, and they might do it again here.
Yeah.
They get in their own way a lot of the times, where last year against the Chiefs, it was not giving the ball to their running backs. It's like that's the strength of their team, and their running backs had 6 combined carries. It's insanity. So I know that they've learned their lesson as far as that goes in a spot like this. But if it's not that, it tends to be something else. It's either a missed throw by Lamar, it's a key turnover, it's something where they just get in their own way. And so that's my first thought is, if I'm thinking about backing Baltimore, it's like the girlfriend that's cheated on you 5 times, and you're like, maybe the 6th time she's learned. It's like, at what point do you learn your lesson and say, I can't trust you anymore? That's where I am with Baltimore. And that's my first initial thought is I just can't trust them. And they have more than enough firepower to prove that wrong. Derrick Henry, like you said, he's gotten better with age, and he's a physical runner. That's what blows my mind even more. It'd be one thing if he's a little bit more on the finesse side. That's not Derrick Henry at all. Think about all those carries, all that punishment that he's received and dished out, and he's still better than he's ever been. That's insane. They have the firepower. I just cannot trust them because of what they've done in the past.
Well, and rightfully so. They've done nothing to give you confidence. I would say this. I think Kansas City matches up better with Baltimore than they do Buffalo. So my guess would be if you gave true serum to Andy Reid, he would say we prefer Baltimore. But either game in the AFC title game would be fabulous.
Yeah, it would be. That's, strength on strength. We talked about it. The Chiefs' rush defense has been really, really good all season long.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can slow down, right? Like keep it in relative check, that Ravens rushing offense. Now all of a sudden that flips it. Where it's 3rd and 7, right? Like it's 3rd and 6. Okay, Lamar, we got to move the chains over here. You've got a receiver. We got to fit it into a tight window. How do you feel about that, right? Like, I don't know. Like Lamar, don't get me wrong. Lamar might win his 3rd MVP. So he's far from, below average or anything like that. But I'm telling you, Chad, he'll make these highlight reel plays, but then he'll have a receiver open once or twice in a game, and he'll miss him. And in these tight games, that could be the difference between a win and a loss.
I agree. Tonight's game, Rams and Vikings moved to Glendale, Arizona because of the horrendous fires. Who do you like in this game?
I like the Vikings. I like Minnesota on a neutral field a little bit more. I trust their defense more. I do like Stafford more than Sam Darnold. I do have to say that. But styles make fights. And listen, going up against the Rams secondary, and I like Darnold, especially in a bounce-back spot. He knows that was his worst performance of the season against Detroit. Got to be absolutely sick about that. And I'm just going to go with the better defense. And in a spot like this, listen, Sam Darnold has put up better numbers than Matthew Stafford this year. This season, Darnold has played better. So even though I like Stafford as a quarterback more, certainly, it's not like I'll put it this way. Darnold this season has been closer to Stafford than the Rams defense has been closer to the Vikings defense, right? Like that's one of the ways I think of it. And so you're looking at teams, not just quarterbacks. I would back the Vikings in this spot.
All right, a couple of questions for you about the head coaching openings. Who do you think Dallas should target now that we know that Mike McCarthy's not returning?
Maybe they should go like they should go the Patriots. Is there like a former linebacker that they could hire? Could you get Leighton Vander Esch to be the new head coach over there?
Yeah, let's do Vander Esch. I like that idea. Let's do it.
Look at Jalen Smith from Notre Dame. He was there for a little while. Listen, who gets Ben Johnson? It seems like the Ben Johnson sweepstakes this offseason, doesn't it?
It does.
Right? And if you look at the job openings, it's really interesting to think, who would you target? If you're Ben Johnson, where would you want to go most? And if you think of Dallas, I mean, you get a healthy Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, right? The defense, I think, still is pretty good. It was just a trickle-down effect from not having the same weapons offensively. I mean, Dallas, everybody loves to talk trash about Dallas. Compare Dallas to some of the job openings, like the Raiders, or it's like Dallas, not that bad of a spot to land. So I would investigate Ben Johnson and go from there for Dallas.
Do you think the Raiders? What about Pete Carroll there? Because he can build a culture, he can get them back on track. Like, I kind of like the idea of Pete Carroll going to the Raiders.
Man, I don't know, man. He's certainly a culture guy. There's no doubt about that. But I look at the Raiders as a long-term build, And how long is Pete coaching? I think Pete, if anything, it'd be a Cowboys-type situation, where it's almost a microwavable. We've got a good roster. We just need you to tighten the screws a little bit. I think that would be a better fit than the Raiders, where that seems more like a long-term build. That's going to be a slow process to get them back to where they want to be.
Yeah, it's a nasty situation. The Raiders, I love it too because I can't stand them, but they've just been garbage. Think about this, Brian. They haven't won a Super Bowl since '84. You and I were in grade school, for crying out loud.
Wow. I know it. It's crazy too. Like, think about Washington. That's what I was saying last night too.
19 years.
Chad, Washington, they've been the Raiders. Like, think about that. They've been the Raiders, and you draft Jaden Daniels, number 2 overall. You bring in Dan Quinn, who's a big culture guy, and poof, you've already won a playoff game. Like, let me ask you this. Can you see the Raiders doing next season what Washington has done this season?
No way. No way.
You see the Raiders winning a playoff game and like, hey, man, they got a chance to knock off the Lions. Like, no way. Or, the AFC equivalent. No chance at all, but that's how special it's been for Washington to go from where they were to where they are. My goodness, Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn, hats off to them.
Okay, I saved the best for last. Congratulations to your Notre Dame Fighting Irish who are in the national championship game. I can't imagine how exciting that is for you. It would seem to me that the point spread's a little bit large, and with their defense, like, I think they can compete in this game. What do they need to do to pull off the upset over Ohio State?
Oh, man, Chad, I am going to be fully geeked for this.
Dude, I saw the picture of you and your pops together all decked out in your Notre Dame gear. That was awesome.
Oh, it was so fun. Yeah, he happened to be in town, and it worked out where we got to see that game together. Yeah. That was really, really cool. And, what does Notre Dame need to do? They got to move the ball. That's the first thing is you got to have an effective running game. I've questioned their passing game all season long, and Ohio State's front seven is pretty nasty.
It's filthy.
Yeah, and the Irish have a number of injuries on the offensive line, defensive line. Their running back, Jeremiah Love, who gutted it out last game against Penn State. But you got to be able to run the ball effectively. That's been the bulk of their offense. So if Ohio State is like, yeah, no, you're not going to have great success at all against us in the running game. My gosh, like you're expecting Riley Leonard and these, number 2, number 3 receivers to beat Ohio State. That's a tall order. So I think it starts in the trenches, and you got to be able to run the ball effectively.
Well, we've seen this before. A lot of times these big favorites in national title games, they go down in flames. We saw it with Miami against Ohio State. The reason why I think Notre Dame's got a legit chance is because their defense is so good. And if they can keep that game low scoring and put themselves in a position, I know they've got a chance. But I'm same as you. Their passing game leaves a lot to be desired. Let's just put it that way.
It absolutely does. Just compare the wide receivers. It's like, this team has Jeremiah Smith. And that team has, Jordan Faison? I guess. But, hey, you've watched enough football. You could have played that game Ohio State versus Michigan.
Yeah.
You could say Ohio State's got this guy, Michigan's got that guy, really? And look at how that game played out, man. You never know in football, and when the stakes are that high, you're telling me Will Howard is incapable of making a stupid decision and a bad, committing a bad turnover? He's fully capable. So Irish are live, Chad. That's all I know.
All right. Well, I hope it shades of Tony Rice on Monday night, man. That's going to be awesome. So you're the best, buddy. I hope you enjoy your week. Good luck to your Irish. We'll talk soon, but enjoy the ball, my friend.
Oh, man, I will, Chad. Always good talking ball with you. You have a great week, and I'll catch you soon,
And by the
man.
way, I'm glad that you are always on the road because I saw that they had to evacuate the Fox Sports Radio studios in California because of the fires. That's scary.
Yeah, that was wild. We didn't have a show on Saturday because of that, and we were back on air Sunday yesterday. But, yeah, they were in the evacuation zone over there in Sherman Oaks. What a terrible situation, man. That's awful, but – yeah, hopefully that'll be, all good to go soon, and they can start rebuilding, man. But and think about tonight. This game is, it's a neutral site because of the wildfires with the Rams. Craziness.
Yeah. No, it's tough. All right, man. Enjoy it. I'll talk soon, bro.
All right, man. Have a good one, Chad. I'll see you, bud.
Bino. Brian O, Fox Sports Radio with us. They did. I saw the evacuation. Fox Sports Radio, the beautiful studios in Sherman Oaks, where I've been multiple times, evacuating the entire building, so they ran tape delay stuff because they had to evacuate the building, but Brian was back on air live on Sunday. All right, we'll come back. We'll keep things rolling. We'll get the insight on Denver as they enter into their offseason. What do they need to go to that next level? We'll find out at 5:20 with Ryan Edwards. All right, about 20 minutes away from kickoff between the Rams and Vikings down in Glendale, Arizona. That game moved down there due to the horrendous fires in Southern California. That'll be the final game of Wild Card Weekend, and then we'll move on to the divisional round. With the Chargers, they got smashed by the Texans on Saturday. I wouldn't be too concerned if you're a Justin Herbert fan or a Charger fan. I know that game did not look good. Justin Herbert was picked 4 times. They really did not play well. They got outcoached, outworked, outclassed in that game. But I look at the Chargers much like I do the Denver Broncos. Young teams with new regimes, building a culture and laying a foundation. And Jim Harbaugh, when he came in, what a beautiful hire that was. And by the way, props to the Chargers, who for years and years were a cheap ownership group, unwilling to pay big money for a big-time coach. But they finally ponied up the cash and brought in Jim Harbaugh to get away from the bums they've been hiring to run their football team. And it paid big-time dividends. You know, in life, not with everything, but in a lot of things, you get what you pay for. And when you hire Jim Harbaugh and you're willing to pay for him and all the different things that he wants to bring to the program, well, you're going to benefit from that. And they won 11 games this year. But most importantly, they had a coach in charge who knew what he was doing. Good decisions were being made. And they're starting to build that culture and foundation to what they want to be. And this is going to be a team that's going to run the football. That will be their priority. And then always doing whatever they can to be strong at the line of scrimmage, especially with the offensive line. They're going to protect Herbert. They're going to run the football. And they're going to continue to develop into a tough, physical team. That's what Harbaugh is. Just look at any place where he's been. Stanford, San Francisco, the Michigan Wolverines, or now with the Chargers. I mean, we know what type of teams he builds. Strong at the line of scrimmage, mentally tough teams that want to run the ball and be aggressive. And they're going to be fine. But you can't do all of that in 1 year. You can't redo the roster completely. You can't bring in all the guys that you want to coach. It takes time to be able to do that because of the salary cap restraints and the fact that you have so few draft picks every year. So you have to be patient in that rebuilding process. They need more playmakers on the outside. They're clearly inferior at that position. They need to take a long look at running back to find the bell cow to be able to be the spearhead for that Jim Harbaugh offense. And then with Justin Herbert, everything's going to be fine. He had a terrific year with limited playmakers around him. It's bizarre that he had, I think, 24 touchdowns and 3 picks during the season, but yet threw 4 picks in the playoff loss at Houston. But they're in the right spot now. It's just a matter of time until Jim Harbaugh has them in a position to compete for a Super Bowl. And that game yesterday doesn't change the way I look at Justin Herbert. He is still one of the absolute best quarterbacks in the NFL who can do everything on the field, super smart, very athletic, and a powerful arm. And I credit him for his toughness, dealing with the foot injury that he had throughout the course of the year. So the offseason will give him a chance to get healthy and for the Chargers to continue to retool the roster. It's the same thing in Denver. Sean Payton got his quarterback in Bo Nix, but they don't have a lot of playmakers. They need receivers. They need a tight end. They need help at middle linebacker. They need a big, sturdy nose tackle. The problem is they were dealing with a lot of salary cap restraints with that massive cap hit by letting go of Russell Wilson. So you can't do it overnight, but they're going to have more flexibility this offseason. So you'll continue to be able to retool through free agency and the draft. And then you've got a young quarterback, so you don't have to worry about that position. So they're in a good spot. I even think the Packers are in a great spot. They got beat up and injured at the wrong time, and they just happen to be in the same division as the Lions and Vikings. But the Packers, all of their great core, drafted and developed. Young talent. They've got a young quarterback. I like their coach, Matt LaFleur. I think Green Bay's in a good spot. All 3 of those teams that lost, Denver, Green Bay, and the LA Chargers, all in a very good spot moving forward because they've got the quarterback situation figured out. They've got good coaches, and they've got young talent that they can continue to build around. But you just have to be patient. It takes time. All right, they're getting ready to kick off down in Glendale, Arizona. We'll head to Denver coming up at 5:20. Hope you're enjoying your Monday. Rip City Drive. If you want to jump on board, 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Tomorrow, the Trailblazers are going to tip off at 7 against the Nets. Our coverage will start from Moda at 5 with Blazers Game Day. And coming up tonight, following the Rip City Drive at 6, Chris Burkhart will have Courtside Monday for more in-depth, detailed Trailblazer talk.
From the Goldberg Jones Sports Desk, your 620 Rip City Radio headlines. Goldberg Jones. Call 1-800-DIVORCE.
All right, 5 o'clock, Chad here. What's going on, my friends? We have the final game of Wild Card Weekend coming up in just a couple of minutes on ABC and ESPN. It's Minnesota taking on the LA Rams. Vikings favored by 3. This game's going to be down in Glendale, Arizona. It was moved by the NFL due to the fires in Southern California. Elsewhere, Mike McCarthy will not return as Cowboys head coach. He's going to be pursued by the Saints and Bears. Coach Prime has the best odds in Vegas at 3-1 to land the job with the Cowboys. Patriots introduced Mike Vrabel as their next head coach. Divisional round will kick off Saturday at 1:30 on ABC and ESPN. Texans at the Chiefs. Kansas City, pursuing their third straight championship, is favored by 7.5. The Blazers are back in town tomorrow night. Second game of a 5-game homestand. They host the Brooklyn Nets. Tip at 7. Chris Burkhart will kick off our coverage with Blazers Game Day at 5, live from Moda, presented by Coors Light.
The home of the OSAA is 620 Rip City Radio.
All right, Chris Burkhart is with me. He's got Courtside Monday coming up at 6 o'clock. Nice to see you, my friend. It was great to see you on Saturday over at Moda for the Blazers' first of 5 straight at home.
The whole gang.
Yeah, the whole gang was there. All of Rip City Radio was in the building at one time.
It was so great.
We really should have grabbed Sean and grabbed a picture. But
Michael Shacker has a unique ability to point out the obvious things that sometimes I'm not even considering at the time. But we do. We need a designated survivor for the station, because if something would have gone sideways inside that building on Saturday night, there'd be no station today.
Well, it would require one of us in our dying breath to text Oaks real quick, give him a call.
It's you now, baby.
It's all on you. We're done.
Dude, I enjoyed what you said after the game in the post-game press conference. You asked Donovan Clingan about the minutes he got to play. He played nearly 30 minutes. Last couple of games, he's had somewhere between 25 and 30 minutes, but he seems to be enjoying getting more action out there on the floor.
Yeah, I can't wait, quite honestly, for him to get more run under his belt with the media and get more comfortable talking, because he gives those short, buttoned-up answers. I'm not right, but it was funny because I asked him, I was like, how nice was it to get out there and know that you were going to play those 30 minutes? You weren't going to play 8. You didn't play 12. As soon as I said you didn't play 8, he smiled. Like he wants to be out there. He knows it. He knows all the things that we all talk about, his shortcomings, his cardio, that he knows it. And he knows you have to be out there to fix those things. So it was nice to see him out there for a large chunk in that starting center role.
That's my big joy right now with this team this year, is watching those young guys. Donovan Clingan, Shaden Sharp, Tamani Kamara, Denny Avdia, Scoot Henderson. I just watched those guys game to game. I'm blown away right now by the tandem of Avdia and Kamara in the starting lineup. The energy those guys bring on a nightly basis, this team's lacked that for quite some time, but those two guys are dogs. I like that, man. Fun.
Not only are they dogs, Chad, one thing I've noticed listening to the post-game press conferences is Tamani Kamara has a way about himself always saying, like, when we play like this and we're clicking, we think we can beat anybody. And he's said that more than once and talked about how good he thinks they can be.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who would just like, oh my gosh, what an idiot, blah, blah. But no, it's that confidence that he has in this team as they continue to build chemistry. And I like that about him. Because one thing, which I get, but I also don't like, is look at Scoot, right? Billups was asked about him and how he battles, going through his ups and downs of his second season. And Billups was like, what I love about Scoot is you can never tell. Like, you can never tell if he's on a heater or if he's struggling, because he's just even keel and he's just a big smile and he's ready to play. And I like that, but at the same time, give me that dog, man. Because guess what? If Kobe Bryant was having a bad stretch of games, you knew that he was pissed about it. Mm-hmm. You know what if Michael was the same thing, right? So I want that little bit of a dog. And Tumani and Denny both play with that. And that's exactly what this team needs. So you gravitate to it and you love it.
I really do. I love to see that young competitive desire. And I think Avdia and Kamara, those are the two guys that I think mirror what Chauncey Billups was about more than any other players that he's had during his time as coach here in Portland.
Yeah, and you need those types, because there was a play, Chad, a couple weeks ago where Denny Avdia has a turnover, sprints back on the field, or on the court, excuse me, doesn't get the stop, but impacts the shot, makes it hard. They have to reset, and they end up not making that shot. But it was the hustle play, right?
Yeah.
And then the same thing in the game a couple nights ago, but it was Shaden Sharp this time. He turns over the ball, jogs over the half-court line, and then stops at about the three-point line and just lets Miami get an easy layup. And the stuff like that, like Denny doesn't do that, Tumani doesn't do that. And it's, like you said, kind of that what Chauncey wants, because Chauncey pointed it out in the post-game presser with what Shea did there. Yeah, just a couple things we need to work on, this and that. So you get more players who play how you want and you start to align it, then you see good things.
I know that the majority of fans are frustrated with Billups, and, this will be his last year in Portland, but I would say this. I think he and his staff are doing a good job with the young guys because we're seeing progression from all of the youngsters. Even Scoot, who has not been what we expected since his career began, has shown some improvement over the last 2.5 to 3 weeks. But those other four guys have been great.
I think the rough part about Scoot is the fact that he was the 3rd overall pick, so he has lofty expectations. And I posed this question to a group chat the other day. Is Scoot bad because he's bad, or is Scoot bad relative to being the 3rd overall pick in the NBA, right? Because if you look at his numbers and how he plays, and Mike Richmond pointed this out, he's playing like a very, very competent, very talented backup point guard right now.
Yeah.
He's not playing like a star. He's not playing like a starter, but he's playing like one of the best backup point guards in the league. That's just what he is right now. When you come to terms with that and you look at his games in that scope, he's doing really well and getting better and still has the potential to hit those ceilings that you all want him to hit.
Well, I think what it is, you and I have talked about this before, how he was sold when he was drafted is not what he is so far. And so people, when he came in, had high expectation because I think the majority thought, here's the heir apparent to Dame. Well, he hasn't materialized into that yet, so people consider that to be a fail. But I just remember with Shaden and with a lot of the guys in the league now, they're so young when they come out that it maybe just takes a little bit longer to get to where you need to be. I don't know what Scoot is yet. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Like Sharp, I'm confident that Sharp is going to become a big-time player.
He plays like it every once in a while, doesn't he? He has that in it. It's
but
a consistency
thing. We haven't seen that yet from Scoot. It doesn't mean we won't. I just haven't seen that extra gear. Sharp's had a few games this year where you see that extra gear and you're like, okay, he's got the makings of something great. Scoot, we haven't seen that yet, but I'm seeing improvement.
Yeah, and you also just need to get the ball in his hands and let him do what he does best. Like, he said it when he hit the game winner. Like, it was nicer to do that than sit in the corner, right? Because it's not his game. His game is ball in his hands, see where he can get to the open shooters and facilitate. And there's been times where he's been on the floor, like when you put him on the floor with Donovan Clingan and Jabari Walker and Tumani's next to him, and you're like, okay, so now you put Scoot out there, but there's no shooters with him. Like, you can't do that. You got to have shooters with him. But I do like what he brings. I also point out, Chad, look at there's been some all-time great point guards in this league. Guys like a Jason Kidd, for one. And I'm not putting him in that same category, but Jason Kidd, he wasn't burning the doors off scoring the ball. He was doing all the little things and then facilitating the offenses, right? Chris Paul is another one who he can go out there and score when he needs to, but he's never had to be the team's number one option on any of his good teams. And that's what you can get with Scoot in the long run.
What jumped out to you this weekend in wildcard action?
Oh, gosh, that when you add the Rose Bowl on it, it was just a terrible day or weekend to be a football fan and a Duck. Like, it's like, oh, really? Herbert and Knicks go out there and they mess around, and it's just that one hurt. But at the end of the day, you look at wildcard weekend, man, and it's like, okay, well, the Ravens are who we thought they were. The Bills are who we thought they were. You got to give Knicks and the Broncos credit for making it look good for a half, right? I think the big takeaway right now is, like, how good can Jaden Daniels and the Commanders be?
Yeah.
Because when he's playing well, man, he very well might be one of the best around. So there's a lot to take away. This next round's going to be quite fun. I think the clamps are going to come down a little bit. You're not going to see these blowouts like you saw here in Wild Card Week. But, it's the guys we thought were going to won, and some of the games looked ugly.
Baltimore at Buffalo is a phenomenal football game.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is who's the MVP, right? Because when everyone's talking who's the MVP of the league, there's two camps. There's Allen and there's Jackson.
It's going to be one of those two.
Those are the two people everyone are debating, and now you're going to put it on full display in front of everybody.
Oh, I can't wait. That's a great game. And the winner likely going to move on to face Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I would expect them to beat the Texans next weekend, and you'll get the matchup of Kansas City taking on either Buffalo or Baltimore.
Yeah, I would expect them to beat the Texans too. Texans they're really good when they're good, but they're up and down, man.
Yeah, just a quick thought on that. I'm just curious to see who that is, Chad, because I had to, I know this is pretty common knowledge, but I had to look it up just to confirm it last night. There have been 3 times Patrick Mahomes has lost in the postseason.
I think I know the 3. The first one was the AFC title game to Tom Brady. He lost to Joe Burrow in Cincinnati.
And then the other Super Bowl to Tom Brady with Tampa.
That's right.
So when you think like only Tom Brady's an enigma. I'm going to put him out there. The only active player to go into Arrowhead
Joe
and
Burrow.
beat, I mean, it's fascinating, very fascinating.
Gosh, they play every game at home except for last year. They get home field and they're just dialed in.
It's filthy.
I mean, they're dominating the NFL right now.
Yeah.
They really are.
I mean, they met the Niners in the Super Bowl, and the Niners looked like a buzzsaw too, right? And they handled them. It's an interesting year, though, because I really think both Buffalo and Baltimore are nasty. I think Detroit's nasty. Like, this is not just the Chiefs and everybody else.
Do you think the majority of football fans are praying for a Buffalo-Detroit matchup in the Super Bowl?
If their team's not in it, yes. I would like that. I mean, that'd be like the ultimate who do you root for Super Bowl. And I do think a majority of people would lean Detroit in that one. Come on, that thing's phenomenal what they got going down there for how bad that franchise has been for basically my entire life. It's glorious. They deserve this.
Detroit KC would be fun to see. I think that would be an awesome match.
I kind of want Kansas City to get in just because I want to see. I've never seen a team have a chance to win 3 straight before.
That would be filthy too.
Air.
That would be filthy.
3 straight. I feel like if Mahomes gets 3 straight, that's another little ingredient that he can use to separate himself from everyone else, and he's chasing Tom Brady. Because as great as Brady was, he never got 3 straight.
I think what makes these last years, and if they make a run this year, even more impressive though, is the loss of weapons on that team. And everyone looked, oh yeah, Tyreek Hill's gone. He's have fun putting up numbers. But yeah, Mahomes' numbers have backtracked a little bit, but the team is still finding ways to win, and a lot of that's Andy Reid click in, right? And they got good chemistry, good roots there, good locker room. But no matter what you take away from them, they find a way to keep moving forward, and that's what a good team does.
I love that so much. Yeah, it's going to be fun. Well, tonight, courtside, what are you going to focus on the show coming up at 6?
Hey, we're going to obviously talk about that little bit of a road trip, what it felt like to come home. I went in on this on game day, but we might dive back in on the fact that the Miami Heat absolutely, Chad, they need to trade Jimmy Butler wherever he wants to go, regardless of what package they get in return, because other teams are watching, and you should probably do right by your superstar, right? That's what they fed Portland fan, so maybe they got to take their own medicine. And then host of the unbiased Trailblazers podcast, Alex Barnhart, will be joining me live from Roseburg via telephone to talk a little hoop.
I had no idea that Miami Heat fans were stronger than horseradish, but I've been catching strays for like 48 hours now.
I remember when you mentioned that. I'm still laughing.
Hey, I mean, if there's ever a fan base to never feel bad for, it's the fan base who, when their team loses, they still get to wake up in Miami, Florida. It's pretty sweet. Come on now.
Yeah, don't you have better things to worry about than getting on social media to talk about Tyler Hero?
The tan lines.
I've never been to South Beach. You have. You said it's awesome.
Oh, Miami's
awesome.
Special. Miami's sweet.
The scenery down there is not bad
food's
either.
Good.
Right?
The scenery is good.
Good things to look at.
Yeah, it's looking out the window of my hotel, and just literally, it's just like all these fat cruise ships, and it's just like, yeah, this is just different, dude. This is different.
All right, when we come back, we'll focus in on the Denver Broncos. What's next for them to go to the next level? Ryan Edwards, KOA, is up next here on the Rip City Drive. All right, the final game of the wild card is underway now. Rams and Vikings down in Glendale. No score with 12 minutes to play in the first. Joining us right now is a good friend of the show. He's with 850 KOA in Denver. He's on social at R. Edwards Radio. Ryan Edwards is back. Ryan, I wanted your take on the game yesterday in Buffalo. Do you think it's good for a team to kind of go under the microscope, to play a powerful team like Buffalo so you can walk out of that and have a true understanding of where you're at and what you need as you continue to build moving forward?
Well, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me on. I think it will eventually be something that is viewed as good. I was in the locker room today with the guys, and they don't feel good about it today. But that's to be expected, right? I mean, a certain amount of being a competitor, being a paid professional, you shouldn't feel good about what happened in that game. You played a bad game. The coaches coached a bad game. I mean, it was all bad all around. I mean, who knows? Even if they played a perfect game, is there an argument that they still could have lost because Buffalo is that good, that much experience in the postseason? Maybe. But, yes, I do think in the long run it's going to be very valuable. You know, I said coming into this final stretch, I said, hey, find a way to make the postseason, even if you get your ears boxed in by the Buffalo Bills, which is obviously what happened. It's still valuable to be in the postseason, get that experience, especially for a young team and a young quarterback, and to say, hey, this is the mark, right? If we want to play with these teams in the postseason, we have to perform at a higher level. We have to have a higher level of talent on our roster. And I think that's good for not only the players, but also the coaching staff to see.
I'm glad you said that. And I really liked Jonathan Cooper's comments after the game where he's like, hey, we weren't ready. We didn't match their intensity. These games are at a different level. And I think you're right. The whole week of preparation leading into the game and playing in that type of game for the young guys, now they have a better idea of what it's like to play at that level so they can be better prepared if they're back in the same position next year.
That's exactly right. I mean, you think about, a lot of these teams that we're seeing in the postseason, several years of heartache, right? Which matters. I mean, it doesn't matter what, game you play, whether it's basketball, whether it's football. I mean, I think that there's a conditioning that happens when you get into the postseason and you see what it looks like, and you do that for several years. Experiencing the heartache of losing in that way and then getting back out there, getting yourself in position again and trying to take a step forward. The Bills have been in the playoffs for 6 years, and they have yet to reach the AFC Championship game. They know what that feels like. They know the heartache and the difficulty to get to where they're at now and to move, but they haven't experienced moving beyond this next round. So it's sort of one of those deals, like before you can really take major advancements, once in a while we'll see a fluky team kind of go on a Cinderella run. But for the most part, the teams that win championships, they had to experience a bit of that heartache first. And I think that in the long run will help the Broncos.
Hey, Ryan, I noticed a lot of criticism for Sean Payton after yesterday's game. Obviously he's got to be better like the rest of his staff. What was your biggest concern with Sean Payton, the play caller, throughout the course of the season?
Oh, boy. It's a few things. I'd say to start with, the commitment to the run game was a weird one. And the fact that they kept bringing in a different running back, they'd run like one play like yesterday, for example. It's kind of a microcosm, right? You decide to go with Tyler Bidet instead of Audric Estime. All right, well, that's your decision. But then what we're going to see out of Tyler Bidet? We get 2 carries for 8 yards. And his very first carry goes for 7, and they pull him right out of the game and then bring in a different running back. And they did that over and over again over the course of the season. I mean, it mostly tells you that they really didn't love this running back group. That's obviously going to be a point of focus for this offseason. They're going to be bringing in somebody, maybe even multiple somebodies. But that honestly right there, for me, is a microcosm of what they are. They really kind of were still playing with their roster there at the end of the season, especially at the running backs. And at the get in the postseason, you got to have some kind of identity there. And you're seeing the teams that are moving on beyond this weekend, the Ravens, the Eagles, for example, they can run the ball. And when they want to run it, they'll get you 5, 6, 7 yards, and eventually those sledgehammers will even get more. But the Broncos just didn't know what they wanted to do there, and that was pretty evident. I think sometimes they got a little over-reliance on the wide receiver screen game as their quote-unquote easy button. Yeah, when it was working, it was great, but then there would be these critical moments where you get these TFLs, and all of a sudden you're putting yourself behind the sticks, or whatever promising drive is now become a 3rd and long that you have to convert to keep things going. So there's a couple things that they relied on their tendencies, and I don't know. I'd say in the end they probably had to call a perfect game in order to win against the Buffalo Bills or even be competitive in that game, and they were far from it.
We're talking with Ryan Edwards, 850 KOA in Denver, focusing in on the Broncos. I just made a short list of what I've seen through my eyes in terms of, biggest needs during the offseason. Playmakers at wide receiver, a number 1 running back, tight end, a bigger nose tackle, middle linebacker help, and maybe some help at safety. What do you think is the biggest need or priority going into the offseason? Is it one of those, or is it something else that you've seen?
I mean, it's all of those things. I think the thing about it is they're not bereft of talent, right? This isn't one of those like the rebuild is still on the horizon. They've come through the rebuild. They have plenty of talent on the roster, but there are some spots that they're going to have to improve. Safety, you mentioned it. That's one of them. PJ Locke is probably not a starting caliber safety. They obviously need improvement in running back. I'd say that they need to find a joker position. I know that's something that John Payton talks about a lot, but that's something that they've really thrived out there in New Orleans with. Whether it was Alvin Kamara or Reggie Bush or one of their tight ends, Jeremy Shockey or Jimmy Graham, having that position is so important. So whether you're going to draft Tyler Warren in the first round or some other tight end, that's a position that you're going to have to bring in. And, you probably want to look at your wide receiver room a little bit more. I mean, you have a lot of young ascending talent, but maybe they don't get there. There's assumptions that Troy Franklin or Devon Bailey take another step next year. We saw some flashes from them, but there's nothing guaranteed about that. So I'd say you're still in the market for more wide receiver help. But in the end, the nice thing is you have building blocks on the offensive line. Like that's going to be done. Like you don't have to worry too much about the offensive line at this point. Maybe you add another defensive line. You mentioned nose tackle. I think that's something you want to be more stout against the run. That sort of wore down as the season got to an end. You definitely were getting gashed in the run a bit more because DJ Jones is not a natural nose tackle. But I guess inside linebacker, you mentioned that one. That's another one. You're missing your starting inside linebacker. So eventually a level of attrition was going to happen. But again, not bereft of talent, but there's definitely some places they're going to have to address.
Bo Nix, I obviously what a success it was for him in his rookie season. Is he a franchise quarterback, or is it still wait and see? He sure looks like he could be. What's your take on Nix after year 1?
I'm ready to say that he's the guy. I mean, of course, you'd like to see what the sophomore season looks like, right? I mean, we've seen sophomore slumps. You see guys take regression steps. I mean, some of the haters or the most critical people like to compare him to Mac Jones, and Mac Jones had a really good rookie season and obviously fell off a cliff in his second year, and now he's a backup in the NFL. So, yes, I think it's fair if there's some people that out there that say, hey, I like what I'm seeing, but I do think that we want to get another season before we're willing to commit. I think that's fair. I mean, think we can have reasonable conversations about those kinds of things. But on the other side, I mean, you're talking about second all time in rookie touchdowns, only behind Justin Herbert, and passing for 3,500 yards, having 34 total touchdowns. I just don't know how. I mean, if he repeats those numbers, what else are you going to say? So I'm willing to take the leap that they found their guy, and at this point, the organization should feel that way too. You'd like to see them approach this off season, with a mindset of let's build around him. Let's give him every chance possibly to take the next step, and then if he falls flat, then we'll revisit it, in the following season. But you got to go into this thing and take that leap and really do a concerted effort to build around him, and you should have some capital to do that.
Yeah, that's cool. I guess what was impressive to me with Bo as a rookie quarterback was the way he progressed throughout the course of the year and was able to be productive with that lack of balance in the offense, like you talked about, without having a run game. That's impressive to me.
It's very impressive, right? I mean, we also knew that Sean Payton was going to show off a little bit with Bo Nix, right? I mean,
yeah, of course.
You take a first-round quarterback, and you are the one that's telling everybody that this was the guy you had all along. Okay, well, we knew that he was going to give him some opportunities to pad some stats and to look pretty impressive, and he did. I mean, that's the thing is he still responded. He looked good, and only early in the season do we have any kind of question whether or not he was going to need some time. And he answered those, like every single time there was a test put in front of him, he answered it. Even that final game against Kansas City, like that game, you really could feel a lot of pressure. You lost 2 in a row. You're at home. The Chiefs are playing some backups. If you're, if there's any doubt in your mind or any doubt in the team's mind that they're going to be able to close that thing out and head into the postseason, we would see it there. But they emphatically won that game. I mean, 38-0. I mean, it was start to finish. All 3 phases did not look rattled. Bo Nix just was on fire. And once again, yeah, you're playing against some backups, but at the same time, hey, man, they're professional athletes. They were out there trying to earn future contracts. They could have embarrassed you, and they would have been an embarrassing moment for the franchise, but instead you went the other way. And I just think every single time there was a mark to be answered, a response you needed, they found a way, and he found a way. So there's a lot of optimism based on those things.
All right, I think they've got around $54 million in cap space for 2025.
Yep.
Are they going to prioritize that by re-signing some of their key guys like Nick Benito? Will they target some, bigger name free agents? How do you think they're going to use their cash?
That's what I expect them to do. And we have some time. There'll be a couple spots that they're going to try to fill, I'm sure. But, yes, Nick Benito is going to be a priority this offseason. You got other contracts that aren't up necessarily, but you might want to consider with Zach Allen, for example, who's in the final year of his contract.
Yeah.
He's been phenomenal, right? John Franklin Myers, maybe, you gave him a 2-year deal. Maybe you decide to spiff him a little bit. Cortland Sutton now in the final year of his contract. What are you going to do with the wide receiver position? Is he still a guy that you want on this team, or are you remaking that again? So there's a few guys that are right in line. Again, Nick's got 1 more year, but again, his performance this year, you really don't want to go another year like that. You probably go ahead and get that thing done now. So there's a few guys that are on the roster right now they view as core guys. I expect them to spend most of their money there.
I wanted to ask you about Bill McCartney, a longtime Colorado coach who passed away. You went to CSU, but of course, I was living in the Colorado area when he was hired as coach and was there for the first few years of his tenure before he won the championship. But I always admired him and had a great deal of respect. But what's really stood out to me over the last few days, and you've worked with a lot of these guys, all the ex-players that played for him, they all revere him and love him dearly. What a great man he was.
Tremendous man, and I had a chance to meet him a few times.
Oh, you
and
did?
Talk to him on the phone. Oh yeah, several times.
Awesome.
And I mean, you're talking about wanting. And again, you're right. I'm a CSU guy, but run through a wall. I mean, every single time the guy just talked. You just, I mean, it was one of those like motivational guys. Like he had this gravitas every time he entered a room. Every time you just even had a simple conversation on the phone with him, you're like, man, this dude, like.
Well, what stood out? What stood out to you in those conversations you had with him? Anything in particular?
I don't remember the contents of a lot of them. I just remember, anytime we talked about the game, right? Like we just talked football. But I'm sure if we could talk about anything at that point, but we talked about football. He just had this way of communicating in a way that you sort of felt like, okay, man, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And honestly, I'm vibing with it. It's hard to describe. There's just some people that have a way of communicating where you believe you're hanging on every word. You're just everything they say. You're just like, okay, yes, that's the exact thing I needed to hear right now. And he just had that way about him. And it was great today on our show. Dave Logan's my co-host, and he's of course a proud Buffalo. And he wasn't coached by Coach Mack because that was after, but he got to work covering the Buffaloes when he left football, and he's on the broadcast and all those kinds of things. And he told some really great Coach Mack stories. But I mean, again, you're talking about a guy that last coached in the early '90s here at CU, and he still talked about. I mean, until recently, we knew he was sick, but I didn't know it was that close. So certainly my heart goes out to his family. But man, he's still revered in this area as one of the all-timers.
That's awesome, man. I went back a couple of nights ago and rewatched the 30 for 30 on Coach McCartney, and it was just great. But and then to see some of the tributes that were put out by Alfred Williams and Chad Brown and the guys who played for him, and and the way Coach Mack was able to deliver, hard messages to those guys, and they responded to him. I love that kind of stuff. But it's like in Colorado history, it's like, you got your Shanahans, your Dan Reeves, and Coach Mack. Like, he's a legend, and he will be forever. He's a one of a kind.
He's one of a kind, and like I said, he had a way of reaching people, and I think part of it also is, he was always known for his discipline, right? And he's obviously known as a man of faith, and I think that there's just a way that he lined people up. You got everybody kind of seeing the same thing, and he was such a good motivational man. And like I said, I mean, he had time for everybody. Even you saw all the tributes. I saw a lot of tributes from people that just had passing moments with him, and that's exactly how you felt. You felt when you were talking to him that he was talking directly to you, even if he was speaking to a whole room of people.
This is just something that popped in my mind, but the super buff fan who's 100, Peggy, did she have a relationship with Coach Mack too? I would assume so, right?
I would assume so. Yeah. I mean, obviously, Peggy's been around the university for a very long time. I have actually never met Peggy.
Oh, you haven't?
But no, I have not.
She's been going to games since the 1940s. Isn't that crazy?
No, listen. I know it's wild. I mean, it's just one of those deals. Like I'm kind of around the program, but I'm not like in it like that. We carry the games, and certainly we have contact with a lot of CU alum. But it's one of those deals like, when I get to CU games, most of the time I'm going there to see my Rams.
Yeah, that's right. You're going to see the Rams. I understand that. Now, do you think, what if the Cowboys pursue Coach Prime? Now, Coach Prime, I believe he wants to be in college because he believes that's his calling. But wouldn't that be tempting if the Cowboys are trying to get him to be head coach?
I would think it would be. But once again, I don't know what motivates Coach Prime at this point, right? Because he has so much control over what he's doing up there at CU.
Full power.
He has, and the way that he leads, the way that he coaches, I don't know if that necessarily translates to the pros. So it's not to say that he wouldn't consider it, especially if Jerry wanted to write him a check that he couldn't refuse. But I just keep coming back to, like, what is his style? And his style still strikes me as a college style. Now, Pete Carroll is also a college-style coach, and he's done really well at the NFL. So it's not to say that it can't be done. It's just one of those deals. Like, I've just viewed him for the longest time as a guy that really connects with college-aged kids.
Yep.
He's found a way to really work the system as it's constituted right now, which is going to give him some longevity if he wants to stay in this. So I hear the reports. I saw that. I saw the Raiders one. I still maintain that he's probably staying put, but we'll see.
I agree. Now, what are you hearing on Pete Carroll? You think he's got a legit chance to land the Raiders gig?
That's what my guy Ben keeps telling me. Ben Albright. He keeps telling me that it's going to be Pete Carroll with the Las Vegas Raiders. And,
interesting.
I mean, Pete. When he was doing his press conference last year after they moved away from him, but they kept him as part of the organization, he was pretty clear he wanted to come back to coaching. He was like not done with it. So at this point, you knew that we come back to this cycle. Him, Belichick, as well as Mike Vrabel. You knew all of them would get looks. Vrabel's already claimed there with the Patriots. Belichick decided to go to UNC. So yeah, for Pete Carroll, I mean, what is he, 74 now? I think. I mean, he's kind of at that spot where it's like, okay, if you're going to do it, let's go do it now. You probably don't want to wait another year or two because then maybe the league doesn't view you necessarily as a guy that can stay much longer. But yeah, I mean, he's still a guy that seems pretty young. And if you're Tom Brady and you're Mark Davis, I think you're looking at that and saying, well, hey, we could bring in a guy that maybe gives us a young up and coming guy, or we can bring in somebody established that gives us a window for the next 3 to 4 years. And that's the direction we're going to go.
All right. You can follow him on social at R. Edwards Radio. He's with 850 KOA in Denver. Ryan Edwards. Hey, Ryan, appreciate it. And thank you for the time throughout the season walking us through Bo Nix's rookie year. We appreciate it, buddy.
Anytime, brother. Thank you.
There you go. Ryan Edwards in Denver talking football. First quarter now. Rams have just tacked on a field goal. They lead the Vikings 10-0 with 4:01 to play in the first. Interesting. All right, we'll keep things rolling here. Yeah, I was a big Coach Mack fan. Bill McCartney was awesome. Just awesome. And that 89 season where they went undefeated and lost the bowl game in the Orange Bowl to Notre Dame was unbelievable. That came after the passing of their starting quarterback, Salinesi, who had impregnated McCartney's daughter. That 30 for 30 is phenomenal. So if you haven't watched it, the Gospel According to Coach Mack, you should probably watch it. Crazy. But Bill McCartney was a one of a kind. All right, we'll keep things rolling here. Rams on top of the Vikes, 10-0. You got the Rip City Drive with Chad doing. I just saw this tweet from Jay Gruden. So Sean McVay versus Kevin O'Connell tonight. I hired them both. Bet I don't get mentioned once. LOL.
I didn't think I'd hear too many Jay Gruden references today, Chad.
That's
Shout
good.
out.
And his brother John is a social media darling, by the way. Also, I got this email. This kind of stuff is crazy to me. I get a bunch of junk mail to my Gmail inbox. I'm sure a lot of you do as well. And I'm just checking through, and all of a sudden I see this attention, important safety notice about your past Amazon order. And so I just happened to click it open to see what was going on. And I hit the link that it sent me. And it's an FDA recall. I bought a bunch of nutrition bars from Amazon, and apparently they contained undeclared milk. And so I'm like, what the heck is undeclared milk? And so I looked that up, and the only reference I got to it is that undeclared milk is milk that is not listed in the ingredients of a food product. This can happen when a food product's label is inaccurate or incomplete. I guess it's like a big food allergy issue. Well, it's a good thing it didn't kill me because I consumed all of the products before I got the email. The notification that there's been a recall for the undeclared milk. Excuse me, I already ate every single one of them, but I appreciate the heads up. I'd never heard of undeclared milk in my life. But I'm still alive, so apparently I don't have an allergy to it, which is very nice to know. But you got to love that. It's like, wait a second, I already ate all of that, you morons. Whatever. Yeah, I do wonder sometimes, though, when you get like a bar or you look at the ingredients, I don't know. It's all nonsense. I love that, though. For immediate release, we are recalling select bars because they may contain undeclared milk. May contain. People who have an allergy or severe sensitivity to milk run the risk of serious or life-threatening allergic reaction if they consume these products. Well, I consumed all of the products, but thank you. And they were delicious, by the way. Undeclared milk or not, they were great. Now, Brenden, I couldn't help but hear you yelling and screaming like a schoolgirl in there. What's going on?
No, so Chris and I, we were anticipating you saying that you thought you maybe got scammed by clicking on, because you're like, oh, and Amazon, we're like, oh no, and then you finish the story, and it makes much more sense. But yeah, I guess all's well that ends well, Chad. You seem here, fit as a fiddle, so, you know.
I'm not dead.
Good to know Amazon dropping the ball.
Have you ever heard of undeclared milk?
I've never heard of that before. Now, that being said, you hit it right on the button. How many people actually look at the ingredient list of everything that we...
I got the time for that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So, you know.
All right.
But what are you thinking of this Minnesota Rams game? Looks like the Rams were off to a pretty good start. I was just telling Chris, that's not quite what I expected from a pretty hot Minnesota team.
Yeah, it's still early, so there's plenty of time for Minnesota to get back in. But right now, the Rams are playing great. But yeah, I don't. Our company, they intentionally place emails in our inbox to see if we're going to click on anything suspicious. So I don't click on anything now.
No, and that's smart. And they've trained us well, Chad, because I have taken that, mentality and told it to many other people in my life. My parents.
No, but I've taken the bait. I've failed at it because I click on it, and then they send me the email saying, you failed our test.
You're like, oh, come on. But yeah, no, it's you got to be careful these days and these scammers. And I thought that's where you were going, but at least it's only undeclared milk. And thankfully you didn't have God forbid, Chad, if it had been the other way and you're like, oh yeah, I do have a milk allergy, like that could have been worse.
Well, yeah, it says you could die.
Yeah, so
of course it can be worse. I could be dead.
Come on, Amazon.
But no, the phishing emails, like I have to. I'm always helping my parents, especially my mom. On that
totally.
Stuff. Yeah, because they'll send those emails like, you owe the IRS a bunch of money. It's like, no, don't respond to any of that stuff. It's all nonsense.
Oh,
Mom.
And my personal new favorite is, you have a USPS package that has not been delivered. Please click this link to retrieve your package. And it's like, yeah, no, man, I didn't have no packages delivered. I mean, it's just pretty basic sense. But, man, they're intense.
Well, the good thing is about like Gmail, they do a pretty good job of filtering all of that nonsense into different folders. So I just auto-delete all the nonsense.
It does do a good job limiting spam and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, I've definitely known some people who have, like you said, Chad, taken the bait, clicked on that link, and had to go through the roundabout way of getting their funds back. So you got to be careful.
Well, we also had the benefit of all learning from Manti Te'o too.
This is this is very true.
Have you seen the doc on that one?
Oh, it's great. Yeah, no, that was one that I circled the second it came out, and just that entire story. I think I was in high school at the time, and I just remember, like, Chad, you can imagine high school guys, like, all of a sudden famous college football star, fake girlfriend. Like, I remember talking about that at the lunch table, kind of a thing. We're like, dude, this fake girlfriend kind of a thing. So that's been in the back of my mind for a long time, and I thought that was a really well done Untold by Netflix for sure.
But how because you're a lot younger than even Chris and I, do the majority, like yourself and your friends, is the majority of dating efforts via apps or online, or are you actually still meeting people in person?
I mean, no, it's 100%. You got to use the app to get the date in person.
So your boys are doing everything via the app?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Like, the chances of one of your boys meeting someone by random in person at some establishment, that's a very slim chance.
Oh,
now.
I'd say slim to none. I mean, hey, Chad, I'm single over here, and I'm still looking for that too, man. Just got to keep swiping, man. I guess that's the name of the game these days.
All right. Big thanks to Ryan Edwards and Brian Noe. Big thanks to Brenden Slaughter. Coming up next, Courtside Monday with Chris Burkhardt. Trailblazers going to be back in action tomorrow. Tip at 7. Chris will have game day at 5 live from Moda here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Enjoy the game tomorrow, and I'll talk to you at 3 on the Rip City Drive.